Welcome to another season, making mastery learning a reality one day at a time. So, Jon Bergmann here, been playing this mastery game now for a number of years. And we start the next season. This is really season 2 of these episodes. And I'm excited to share with you about how mastery learning works, what I'm learning, what I'm seeing in my classrooms, what I'm hearing from people around the world. So that's the purpose of this podcast, is to help you do mastery well. So let me say that mastery learning is hard. It's really hard work. And, I believe the most important part, though, of a mastery learning classroom is how you set it up, how you communicate to your students how to do mastery well. Students need to buy into the big idea of what mastery is. So at some level, your first week, not just at some level, what I confidently believe is that first week, that first 10 days of your class is what sets the stage for how you're going to set up and help students to learn. And to that end, I'm recording this if you're watching this online, or if you're watching it as opposed to just listening to it. I'm in my classroom. I have been spending the better part of the last week working on setting up mastery learning for my students. So as I have thought about how mastery learning went last year, I identified what I believe is the biggest issue that my students face. Now, number one, actually, before I get to the biggest issue, let me say this. One thing I've reflected on is that last year, though my students were in person all year, it was a weird and wonky year, right? It was the year-ish kind of still COVID, kind of not COVID, Omicron, all this stuff. And my students came to me in many ways pretty relatively unprepared for the rigors of the classroom that I teach. I teach high school chemistry and physics. And I realized that I needed to kind of step up my game and particularly get students to more deeply interact with the pre-learning, because this is mastery learning with the flip twist. And there is this self-learning. One of the features of mastery and even flipped learning is that students have to learn how to learn by themselves. So when you're giving them the independent space work, the pre-learning, they have to learn it well. And this is where the issue was, is that my students, they may have watched the video, but they weren't watching it deeply. So to that end, I have come up with several different tweaks that I'm going to be using this year. Now, I started playing around with interactive notebooks last year, but I didn't do a really good job. So over the summer, I began to deeply think about how to do interactive notebooks. I scoured the internet, looked for other teachers who've done this for years, and frankly, I had done this years and years ago when I was a traditional teacher, and I loved it, and it worked, and I didn't really bring it into my mastery practice. So to that end, I have created, here is, you may see this if you're listening, it's an interactive notebook where they've got things that you can